You are listening to Radio Belvaspata, South Africa. This show is dedicated to those who live and love from the heart in infinite ways. In today's episode, we will discuss, share, gain insights, and get clarity on the wisdom and teachings of the mystic and seer Almin, as well as discover more about the miraculous healing modality called Belvaspata. Your host for this show is Paul.
The sublime path of being a blessing to mankind, shedding light on dark days, is not for those who pretend ignorance to escape culpability. It is not for those who hide behind false humility, which is simply conceding to the arrogance of another. Instead, it is for men and women willing to let their light increasingly illuminate with the soft flow of hope of the darkest corners of the lives that they touch. It calls for masters with the innocence of a child, who freely acknowledge their inability to know the infinite plan of wisdom that shapes the lives of their fellow men. Through these masters, the infinite speaks.
Let us find out today who is the real power behind government. My brothers and sisters of light, the answer may surprise you. It is you. I am very well aware that even though the higher echelons of those who call themselves the secret government have in fact no longer embodiment as that role, that there are still levels below them, levels that are possibly more familiar to you, that still exist. But who is the real power behind the throne? Let me explain to you why I'm telling you that it's you. Every day, I share in my blog diary what it is that day is transpiring in the cosmos and how, in a very pertinent way, we can make those changes. We have been created not all with equal light, but if you are listening to my words, you are possibly those with the greater light. The greater your light, the greater your understanding that you are a being as vast as the cosmos having a human experience, the greater the influence you have day by day as you see what needs to be changed in the mirrors of your environment and change it within. Before October, there were multiple prophecies that came from many of the leaders, even someone like Alma, who does not normally engage in prophecy, made it quite clear that on October the 13th, there would be a major financial collapse. I was contacted by Sedona Journal and asked if I would write a prophecy and prediction article for them, which is in their December 2008 issue. At the time, I was the only one that said that there would not be a financial collapse, that monetarily things would definitely shift in power and move around, but that it would not actually collapse. The reason that I was able to say that, and for those of you that do follow my daily blog, you would have known it ahead of time, but the infinite had placed into the laws of existence from the beginning of October that restitution should be made, where things had been taken, making a few have more when it's taken away from the many, that it needed to come into balance. It was also put into the laws of existence that overinflated value given to institutions, given to currencies, should adjust itself. But it was unequivocally stated that it would never again be the case that a major global financial or any other catastrophe would bring great suffering to the multitudes. I have looked at the documentary videos from our local library as part of one of my classes that I gave on what the Depression was like. It was a class in which we tried to understand our parents and what they've been through. The suffering of it isn't often spoken of. Folks wish to move on, but it was a grievous suffering, and it went from country to country. It is not the intention of the infinite that such be the case. We can prevent it. Light workers are on a day-by-day basis given the method and the means to change life within. It is said in Revelation that when the new age dawns, which it has, because as of October, we are no longer made from a foreign substance. We have become real. We are made from the infinite's being. A new day has dawned, that the saints shall govern the earth. Literally, the word saints means those that cooperate with life. It is you. You are the powers behind the throne.
The Seer Al-Min tells us that the need for external laws to govern inner man implies that he is an effect of circumstances rather than the expression of the one life. Good evening and hello everyone. Thank you for joining us tonight on Radio Belvaspata, South Africa. I'm your host Paul in studio. Nico as usual is handling our sound desk, and tonight we are going to be discussing aspects of how to create compassion for the self. We hope to inspire you to understand on a deeper level what is going on cosmically, so that we can apply our processes, our own individual journeys of ascension into the light and into deeper aspects of creating frequency for ourselves. Remember that creating compassion for the self is really one of the ultimate ascension gifts that one can bring into the play, into the drama of the ascension process. I'm saying that compassion can be really extended to create two words, and we're going to call that compressed passion. And I'm sure a lot of you are realizing and seeing for yourself, and as we've been discussing on the show over the last few months, is that for many of us individually and perhaps also collectively, we just cannot live in the old processes any longer. We're only wanting to live in a state of inspiration and passion. And that's really what this show is all about, to offer some insights, to offer some guidance, to work with the teachings of the mystic and Seer Al-Min, and to bring you information and share our journey together every single Thursday. And thank you for joining us. And thank you for all our new followers. You're listening live to us tonight. We appreciate that. If you're listening in the the published podcast form, thank you as well. We look forward to hearing from you. And please remember tonight to give us lots of comments and tell us what you're thinking, what your insights are. The show is based around you. It's based around us. And we love sharing where we're going on. But let's remember, compressed passion, compassion, it's really about bursting open to the passion of wanting to live in joy and inspiration. This is so not just the right time or even a time to give up. Rather, it's a time to create ways of living in joy and making the relevant changes required to do so. Listen to the high heart. A few weeks ago, we gave some Al-Min wisdom and Al-Min post about working into the high heart. So we're going to get into deeper insights about the heart tonight. We're going to talk about the different realms of emotion, of thought, of physicality, and we're going to talk about the principles of divine compassion. So let's look a little bit about that. Remember last week's show, if you tuned in with us, we spoke about that Al-Min had received the first three sigils, the three of a total of 8 principles of divine compassion. And that in a couple of weeks, Al-Min will share all 8 concepts and then expand on them. Is this something that you are already practicing, was the question that we asked. So just to repeat, that the first 3 principles of divine compassion. Number 1, experiencing the rapture of the real touching of the real and timeless core of another. Number 2 is when you find another expression of the infinite, honor the alchemy of the meeting of 2 divine perspectives to create new possibilities. Guard its sanctity from the pollution of worldly games. And the third one was fearlessly enter into the vastness of one another. that you may be reminded of the sacredness that hides within form. Enter with your heart so that they may not be overwhelmed. And absolutely beautiful, those three different aspects of divine compassion, and we look forward to the rest of them coming out. So we're bringing it up on purpose because tonight's show is really about living in compassion and understanding that the emotional outbursts, the anger outburst, the outpouring that is really going on, and I think for many of us, we can see it worldwide, is so linked to so many different things. There was a question put up on Almeen Diary, so I'd like to share that with you. And the question posed to her was, could she please comment on the California Oroville Dam situation? And there's been various theories, including one of this being a warning shot to the current U.S. administration for recent executive actions and the massive pedophile ring bust last month or the month before in California, in which 474 child predators were arrested. But this is the official story, and this is still on Almeen Diary. Heavy rains last week caused the lake level to rise until the water began to pour down the emergency spillway on Sunday. Authorities ordered people to leave the area when a hole developed in an eroded area of the spillway, affecting about 188,000 residents. Officials worried the spillway would fail, and one even warned that a 30-foot wall of water could flood the communities below the dam. So fears of such a disaster have largely been alleviated. And that was a CNN source. Almeen posts and replies, there is no foul play. It is the result of the response and the work of the sacred government to her request to end the drought. California was severely drought-stricken, as was Oregon, which is now flooding everywhere. The drought was in part caused by suppressed emotions of despair, and this was despair at the disintegration of society and environmental destruction, as well as anger at the deceit of self-serving and uncaring politicians. The emotion has flowed out, as seen in the global reaction against Trump, but there's still so much suppressed, threatening to burst like a dam. And Almeen continues that as for the pedophiles arrested, it was time. The release of the new time map in February caused the masters from around the world to focus on the inner child on the same days. This has strengthened the earth's inner child, the indigenous people. And then posted up on that same post was a sigil for the inner child, and also some healing aspect to work with angels and sigils there. So folks, if you haven't seen it already, please go to our Facebook page. And what we did is we created a mini healing experience through a 3-minute meditation where we brought up the inner child and this angel inside a wheel, and we invited people to actually work with the wheel and spin it through them from their head up to their toe, and just take some deep breaths and listen to the Almeen-based music that we'd also added to that particular video. And thank you to everyone who has watched that and has commented and sent us either private messages or on Facebook, etc. It's really great to see everyone using the tools that Almeen has provided. And we, of course, are very happy then to just continue that work and share it with everybody who's interested in listening to it. So absolutely fantastic along the way. But it also pays heed to notice at this particular time is that, South Africa's had many years of drought. And just in the last few months or so, we have had massive floods and rains in so many different areas. For us here in Johannesburg at the moment, it's extremely cold, just like winter. But we are also experiencing heavy rains the whole week. Absolutely fascinating to watch it. It doesn't look like the rain is going to end. And then the warnings in the weather forecast and reports are that most of South Africa is now experiencing heavy rain, and flooding warnings are widespread. So, for example, the Kruger National Park is again flooding, and this is as a result of the cyclone coming in through Mozambique last week and just dumping huge amounts of water. And of course, water is linked to the emotion, it's linked to the heart, and linked to these anger outbursts and emotional outbursts that people are feeling. And today we'd like to just go into a little bit more depth as to the potential and possibilities of why we are feeling this, because one of the things that we do as light workers and healers, sometimes we are incredibly focused on so many different things, so many different processes, all other people's issues and problems in terms of wanting to help them resolve it. But I've learned for myself through this journey with Almeen is that the only one I need to actually focus on is myself, and that all the answers and solutions are found within the moment as I allow them to come up. And this is something that I've been really taken to, excuse the pun, literally taken to heart and started to work with it. But, Almeen's teachings allows us to look at our difference between the emotions, between the feelings, and seeing the difference between the two. But for today's radio show, we've got some interesting details because we've got some talks by other mainstream healers in the world which will detail these aspects of these realms that we are living in on a mental level, on an emotional level, on a physical level. And as through Almeen's teachings of as we move into the high heart, which really started in January 2014, that particular work started to get posted up, and then the workshops and webinars and courses came through all of that particular process. And as we learned to lift into the high heart, which is situated just below the thymus in the body, then we start to function from the high heart, because we have to understand that within the matrix, within the grid of all of these experiences, our emotions are trapped within our belief systems. Our feelings are there very, very much based on that. Our mental processing, our way that we think, the way that we respond through thought, are all trapped within the beliefs and programmings within the matrix. And so as we started to develop this understanding of living in the compassion of the high heart, then we become much more freer and able to see things in a much more clearer way. And this is the goal of tonight's show, is to inspire us all to look very deeply within all of that aspect of it. And know that the inner child, as we've been discussing show after show after show, really incredible just watching the dynamics of all that at play. And quite honestly, at times we've not really realized for ourselves why we're discussing it, why we're feeling those particular aspects, why it is important for us. But then as we develop the discussion in a week or two after that, then there it comes, the answers worldwide, cosmically, through Almeen, sharing with us each moment, and we get those beautiful aha moments. And so we have some of those aha moments coming up tonight with some of the discussions we've had on the show. So, for example, with the Master Diane, we'll be discussing that particular aspect as well. So one thing that we need to also be very, very clear on is that many of us are feeling completely out of sorts. I know in previous shows we've listed all sorts of, number 1 to 100 reasons why this is happening and you're feeling like this. And it's all clarity as to the ascension process that's going on. But the internet is full of that particular process. We could just Google it and you'd get any particular spiritual teacher who will be telling you these are what is experienced. So we can say, yes, I identify with all of that. But that's not really enough. We have to understand that our job is to dissolve all of these traps, all of these fears, all of these programs and beliefs. That's our particular work. And as we dissolve them, then we step into a state of complete newness, of new processes that are going on. And these are unnamed, they are unexperienced, they are things that we don't even have any knowledge or information about. And so they're incredibly difficult and challenging at times to put into words. But then as we start to live through them, then we start these aspects of living more compassionate lives within ourselves, things begin to become clearer and clearer. And so we're ready then to move into the next level, as we call it, the stepping stone of things. So, Almeen just talked about now the release of the new time map, which we were reading about that particular post. And one of the things that we need to understand is that when we are in a day of no time, and that is very, very prevalent for us to understand, we are going to feel completely out of sorts. We're not going to be able to understand all of these particular aspects. And Almeen has answered this along the way, and really incredible, because the question that was given to her that, we've received multiple questions about blank squares on this year's time map. And then there's examples of the blank squares, such as 274, and on other maps, numbers 133, and there's just nothing in them. And Almeen says that when a day is out of time, it means that we will be living it. I'm going to just repeat that again. Sorry, excuse me for the thing there. Let me just confirm what I'm saying. Almeen says that when a day is out of time, it means that we will be living it from 2 or more different dimensions or levels of realities. This year's time map has every day as a day out of time. The blank squares are something we haven't studied before. They are days of no time, gone beyond time. The future doesn't lie in a straight line ahead of us. It lies around us in the moment as unmaterialized potential. A day of no time can access and manifest future potential today. So you can see just from that short explanation of it that we are living in all these different realities, and a lot of time these realities are something that are manifesting within us as something brand new, unexplored, undiscovered, and can be incredibly challenging when the, let's say, the previous identification phases of ego consciousness are biting hard and wanting us just to go back to that which we know. And the result of this is that we start to live in huge amounts of fear. And from fear then, of course, comes results of anger as soon as we are having to deal with changes and all sorts of processes. I myself just sat today and looked at some of the short summaries of the finance budget that we had within our South African Parliament last night. And absolutely incredible to watch the plans that are being made for them to get more money. And again, we're going through this process where the rich get taxed more, and it's meant to go to the poor to equal everything out. But of course, we all know where all of those particular aspects go to. And that is just something that we are having to deal with. We're having to deal with the fact and the fear, for example, that we now have to provide more, we have to manifest more, we have to create more. In other words, we have to work harder and harder and harder. And so then we come into aspects of looking at our own abundance and working with all of this. But I'd just like to remind you that this is a show really about Belvaspata healing from the mystic and seer Almin. And the Belvaspata alchemical equation is very important for us to understand. And the work for us that we need to start to begin to bring it into play is of paramount importance at this particular moment. So the alchemical equation is that compassionate support, and we add awakening from the dream. In other words, dissolving the aspects of what we are trapped within the matrix about, aligns us then with the song of creation. And so we come into new aspects of creation. And when we get trapped into all of these little aspects and fear, etc., we really start to get more and more questions about where we're at. And this will eventually just take away all your passion and all your inspiration for everything. So best not to do that, but also best not to be blind about it. Understand that we are living and creating in so many different realities. And we're going to talk more about some of that as we're going along. Let's look at the prediction of the week that's come out. And this is the prediction from the Russian family. And it starts off, and listen to these details of this. The depth of where we're at is really incredible. Yet again, a time has begun for speedy restoration of white magic in your lives. Remember that all outer changes happen through changes within. Be the source of your reality. Look inside yourself. Trust your intuition. Trust yourself. Always remember that all answers lie within yourself, and only they are the truth. You have become a PowerPoint and are drawing in auspicious circumstances. This is the time to envision your goals in great detail to create positive results. A message of importance will be delivered. Sit in quietness with pen and paper, in case it comes from the hidden realms. The message may also come through as a sign in your environment. Be aware enough to see it. The dedicated commitment to absolute clarity births uncluttered vision. Choose the path of remaining in absolute clarity and examine to what extent your perception comes from truth. Expect immediate changes of grace in your environment by living your highest perception. Claim inner responsibility for outer circumstances. With a light heart, dance the agendaless interactive dance of exuberant playfulness. Live in joy right now. And that was this week's weekly prediction based on the sacred runes of the Infinite Mother and compiled by Grand Master of the Runes in Russia, Ella Jelinek. And thank you very much, Ella, for the promptness and the commitment to doing all of that. So we've got some Almin audio now that we're going to listen to. It's two particular tracks that you can merge together, one after the other. The first one is entitled What is the Matrix? And the other one is what is called Who is Creating Your Reality? And linked to exactly what we've been discussing, and of course with this incredible prediction for the week. So we'll see you on the other side of this.
It's a little bit like a blank computer. Nothing is on it. but you use it year after year after year. And it's a very smart computer, so you ask it questions. Well, how should I choose this or that? Or, do you think I'm making the right move by changing my jobs? I will have more money, but it's further to commute. Family won't like it so much, less time with them. What is the ultimate conclusion? The computer will draw its conclusions from the knowledge that it has been fed over its journey as your computer. So as you enter daily experiences and conclusions into its database, it is from that it will extrapolate how to choose what your next step is. In other words, the matrix is a storage place of light and frequency. Light holds accessed information, conclusions, deductions, and frequency holds memories. It's based on frequency and light. There's usually a dual layer. If you travel into a matrix, there's actually 3 layers, but the frequency and light are 2 of those layers, the other one being a neutral grounding layer. So what you have is that it's the collective database of all experience that has been. It also takes into consideration that which is a very important basis of karma. That which is the important basis of karma is regrets. If only. What would have happened if I'd gone to college, if I'd taken another degree, if I'd married this person instead of that person, if only I had listened to my mother and practiced my piano. All of these things. The if-onlys, the what-ifs, the should-haves, and the could-haves. Everything to do with regrets, which is based on self-blame and guilt, and the blame of others, and the guilt that you give others. So this is also taken into consideration, plus all that we think we know, because mind has labeled it and heart has attached value to it. This collectively is the database of the computer. That is the best way I can explain exactly what the matrix is. If you're in the tube torus, the tube torus is your reality. If you are not creating that reality, who is? You are creating it. But you are creating it from ghosts of the past. The only thing that you can put in that reality as you live, because you're now no longer where the river runs through it, you're no longer where fresh new information comes, is your old information. And as you spiral on this disc of life around the tube torus of your particular reality, you stimulate it into action, but it's the same old action. So, what is your tube torus if you're living within those mirrors that it has become, rather than in the center of the tube torus? You are living in a ghost of the past. Technically, that reality isn't even there. Why? Because it's something that isn't being generated with the alchemical potency and that which enlivens all things, which is the infinite. It isn't being touched by the infinite. It's an old ghost that hovers there, and you've been moving around and around in incarnations within a ghost of the past. That's why some sages have said about the nature of reality, it is not real. It is not real. What a huge insight. It is not real because it isn't enlivened. But it can be. So how do you make your experiential reality real? You have to generate it in high alchemy of ongoing alchemy with infinite intent. To do that, you cannot even accomplish any of it if you are pulled in by the games of those whose minds are bending to step back into the tube torus. This is your final test. This is your final battle. It's like the Armageddon. We have to step out of the games of man into that center place where infinite intent touches us and we express, and then we get feedback from our expression, feedback from our art that we do in our life, which has been such, and I'm laughing because it has been such a theme here this week. And I have said during the week that every word we say is going to start to make sense towards the end of the week. We're in our second last day. What comes into the chakras? Feedback of what it's creating. First of all, we step into the middle of our tube torus, into the river, by living in the moment. Now, we have for years been talking about how to live in the moment. You cannot suppress anything, because if you suppress feelings and emotions, they cause a dialogue in the mind. If you suppress them and you have a dialogue in the mind, and you don't want to have a dialogue in the mind, all you can do is to simply ignore them, to disassociate. None of this is stepping into the center. Yes, it may be called surrender, but really I call it disassociativeness. Because surrender has to look at the good and the bad and the ugly and find in it the poetry of creation.
And you're back with Radio Belvaspata. I'm your host, Paul, for today's episode, Cyclones, Emotional Outbursts and Compassion. This is the radio show episode for February, the 23rd of February. If you're listening live to us, thank you very much. Please remember to add your comments here onto the page, and we'd love to hear them and read them as we're going along. Alternatively, you're welcome to email us directly on info@belvaspata.co.za or visit our website www.belvaspata.co.za. We are talking today all about the aspects of healing, of having compassion for the self, of not pushing yourself into boundaries where we don't need to go, but simply allowing things to unfold within the self. There's been an interesting discussion and conversation between us here within the team at Belvaspata Healing South Africa. And you may have remembered even last week's show, or a show a few weeks ago, where we had the Master Diane in studio with us, and she was sharing about how music turns into sound waves, and we were discussing the aspects of cell structure and DNA. And lo and behold, Diane, you're listening to us tonight, or whoever's listening and remembers that particular discussion, listen to what is about to unfold for us, because really incredible. There's an article called The Synchronicity Key, which is the hidden intelligence guiding the universe and you, and this is by New York Times best-selling author David Wilcock. It's entitled Scientific Experiments Show That DNA Begins as a Quantum Wave and Not as a Molecule. So this is turning science completely upside down all over again. Absolutely incredible to read it, and then just to also understand that Diane, through the work and through the studies, and as she was actually working with it, was starting to uncover a lot of that information within herself, and as she brings that reality into place, then of course that reality becomes something for everyone else to have to work with. And so this is how we all begin the ascension process and begin to step into states of transformation. So the article really talks about the strands of DNA and the work within the DNA, and I'm going to just work through some of it for a while. It's just fascinating information. and really in line with understanding how creation comes into place. And these are aspects of compassion. So one strand of DNA from one single cell contains enough information to clone an entire organism. Obviously, understanding DNA allows us to understand much about life and the universe around us. A deeper understanding of the new science tells us that DNA begins not as a molecule, but as a wave form. Even more interestingly, this waveform exists as a pattern within time and space and is coded throughout the entire universe. We are surrounded by pulsating waves of invisible genetic information, whose waves create microscopic gravitational forces that pull in atoms and molecules from their surrounding environment, which then constructs DNA. One scientist who caught these microgravitational forces in their action is Dr. Sergei Lakin. And in 2008, he put different types of DNA in regular salt water and marked each type with a different fluorescent color. And the DNA molecules were then scattered throughout the water. In the experiment's major surprise, matching DNA molecules were found pairing together. After a short time, entire clusters of the same colored DNA molecules had formed. The scientists then believed that some form of electromagnetic charge allowed the same colored molecules to cluster. However, other experiments show that this is not the case. That is most likely to be gravity, but let us explain. In 2011, a Nobel Prize winner called Dr. Luc Montagnier demonstrated that DNA could be spontaneously formed out of merely placing hydrogen and oxygen together. He started out with a hermetically sealed tube of pure sterilized water and then placed another sealed tube next to it, which had small amounts of DNA floating in water. The Dr. Luc Montagnier then electrified both tubes with a weak 7 Hz electromagnetic field and waited. 18 hours later, little pieces of DNA had grown in the original tube, which consisted of only pure sterilized water. This new science tells us that the universe is constantly conspiring to make biological life, whenever and wherever it can. In any given area of the universe, these hidden microgravitational waves will begin gathering atoms and molecules together to create DNA, and thus life then forms. Another phenomenal discovery was made when Dr. Fritz Albert Popp caught DNA in the act of pulling in photons, which are tiny packets of energy that make up visible light. The new science reveals that photons are essential to the basic health and function of DNA and are apparently used to send and receive information throughout the body. He found that each DNA molecule stores up to 1,000 photons within itself, similar to that of a tiny fiber optic cable. The photons shoot back and forth at the speed of light inside the molecules and are stored until they need to be used. In 1984, a Russian scientist called Dr. Peter Garyev discovered that when a DNA molecule was placed inside a small quartz container, it naturally absorbed every photon in the room. A stunning analogy of this would be that of a single person standing in a large sports stadium and having every photon in the stadium somehow bending directly to that person, leaving that person's body literally glowing with light, while the rest of the stadium goes completely dark. In conventional science, the only force that can bend light is gravity, and it is done only around a black hole. Thus, it appears DNA is generating a microgravitational effect that attracts and captures light. Looking back to the first experiment mentioned in this article by Dr. Lakin, we see that it is indeed likely not an electrical charge that forced or allowed the same DNA molecules to attract to one another, but it is likely due to gravity, as electrical charges have never been able to bend light as it moves through space. The most incredible part of Dr. Garyev's experiment came when he thought it was over. He had pulled out the DNA from the quartz container and looked back into the container, only to find that photons were still spiraling in the exact same place where the DNA had been. Apparently, some sort of gravitational influence was holding photons right where the DNA had been. This later became called the DNA phantom effect. Thus, DNA is creating an energetic force that absorbs photons and pulls them right into the molecule. But the DNA itself isn't even needed. It is some invisible force or some wave that attracts and holds the light photons there all by itself. Dr. Gariev found that he could blast the phantom with super cold liquid nitrogen gas, and the photons would all escape from the force field. Within 5 to 8 minutes, though, new photons would be captured and the entire phantom would reappear. He could keep doing this as much as he wanted, but new photons would keep appearing. In fact, it was only after doing this for 30 days straight that the photons finally did not reappear. So, although this last experiment was done over 30 years ago, the significance of it yet is still to be truly felt. The first 2 experiments are still relatively young and have also yet to be fully appreciated. Clearly, though, our view of the universe and life itself is changing as these concepts are understood by more people each and every day. Wonderful article, so thanks very much for listening to all of that, but it just shows the possibility that we have and how life itself can change when we create an electromagnetic field around it. And so we need to also understand that Belvaspata healing itself, light and frequency, creates an electromagnetic charge, which then starts to redistribute all of these particular aspects. And even though there are some differences between the teachings of Belvaspata and as an alchemical science of healing, we need to also look at what science is saying to us and liken the two together. And even though within this article that I've just been working through and the teachings of Belvaspata, I must acknowledge that there are some differences in that particular process. However, we must also please understand that the article is over 30 years old, whereas Belvaspata itself only really came up into being within the universal process from about 2005 onwards, and so it is relatively new as a healing, energetic, as a healing modality, but the light and frequency aspect very, very important to understand. Now we have now moved into a different state of ascension. So Almin says to us, have patience whilst waiting for the next step. We do not go into the future, it comes to us. Let's now listen to the author and healer and scientist Greg Baden as he talks about compassion within the matrix, and for him his explanation of what the matrix is about.
Absolutely. The whole idea, and the abbot in Tibet was so very clear when he said this, the new abbot. And I asked him the question through the translator. I said, what is the force that holds the universe together? We had already had the conversation that there is something out there. So I was asking for specifics from his Buddhist, Tibetan Buddhist perspective. I said, what is it that holds the universe together? What connects everything in the universe? And he had a conversation with the translator, and then he answered me with one word. He said, compassion. And I said, well, wait a minute. I thought that compassion is a feeling, an experience that we have in our bodies and our hearts. I'm asking you, what is the force that holds everything together? And he answered me again. He said, compassion. And I said, well, is it an experience or is it a force? And he said, yes, it is both. And to me, that is so powerful because it reminds us that we are born into this world with a power in our hearts that we already have, that we don't have to learn. It's already there. And it's a power that aligns us with the framework, with the matrix of the universe itself, as Max Planck called this field of energy, the matrix, in 1944. He coined the term, the matrix, to describe this network of energy that holds particles of the universe together. And from the Buddhist perspective, the Tibetan Buddhist perspective, they recognize that the experience of compassion, it's not just feeling sorry for someone or saying, oh, poor person, they're having a bad day. In Western traditions, sometimes people think of compassion as that way. And that may be a part of it. But from the Buddhist perspective, it's much deeper than that. It is living life awake and conscious and present in our hearts in the moment, knowing that we are part of all that is, and that what we do every moment of life is affecting not only us, it's affecting the other side of the universe, and consciously living our lives respecting and honoring that relationship. And it's such a beautiful way to live. Now that scientists have been able to show us through the imagery of the Chandra X-ray Space Observatory, the mission of this observatory was to detect invisible fields of energy in the universe. So while scientists have always suspected that up to 90% of the universe, they say, is empty, and this observatory now is showing us that in the space that we once believed was empty, it's not empty. There's a lot of energy in there, and it looks like a web or a net of energy. And it is the compassion in our hearts that creates the waves, the belief waves of electrical and magnetic energy that align us with this field. This is our technical, Western, male-dominated, schematically oriented, scientific way of describing, and it sounds very complex. The Buddhist monk, the abbot, he says compassion, and he says the same thing. And they have always known this. And this is where it's so fascinating to me, because science is a language. And it is only one language that describes our world and our relationship to the world. There are other languages. And science is a relatively new language. It's only about 400 years old. Other languages are 7,000 years old in the case of the Vedas. So science is good, however, it's incomplete. And we know that science does not have all of the complete answers. So when we go into the other traditions to see how they describe our relationship to the universe, in some ways they're much more complete. So Western science now, modern science, is only arriving in the last years of the 20th century and early 21st century. They have just arrived at the understanding that the field is out there, and they're saying, what do we do with this field? On the one hand, and on the other hand, this is the place where the ancient traditions have always begun. Science has spent 400 years debating and trying to prove whether or not everything is connected, while these ancient traditions began with the understanding that of course everything is connected. They didn't spend 400 years proving the connection. Their 400 years was used exploring how we may use that connection to become better people and create a better world. And for me, as a scientist, this is the value of looking into our most ancient and cherished traditions, honoring our past. Don't throw it out the window, honor it, and marry that wisdom with the best science of today. And together they create a greater wisdom than either would give us individually. And I think that we need that wisdom now at this time in history to solve the problems that we see in our lives. Science tells us how things work. The ancient traditions tell us how to apply that understanding in our life. Science told us that we must believe either one or the other, science or spirituality, but not both. Now, as a child, I always believed that science and spirituality are the same thing, and I thought everybody else believed the same thing. They just didn't talk about it. So I always believed that when we study science, we understand nature and how the world works. Ultimately, we're understanding God. But when I began working in the corporations, I found nothing could be further from the truth. They said, you either are a scientist or you're a spiritualist. You either use technology or you use religion. And it doesn't have to be that way. So I think our greatest power in this civilization, there is a new science and a new spirituality that's being born right now. And it's so new it doesn't even have a name. We don't know what we'll call it. And maybe it's better with no name, because if there's a name, then there's rules and somebody owns it. So right now it has no name. But it is a blending, a beautiful marriage of the technology and science that we have today with the understandings that have served us for over 5,000 years and got us to the point where we are today.
And you're back in studio with your host today. I am Paul here with Nico, handing our sound desk, and we are talking all about emotional outbursts. We're talking about cyclones, and we're also talking about the aspects of compassion, especially self-compassion, and how to work with it within the high heart. In the Sedona Journal in January 2015, the mystic and seer Almin wrote about the high heart, entitling it The Key to Miraculous Transmutation. She talks about the metamorphosis of the body into higher expression with high magic. The terms high magic and high alchemy both imply that the practitioner is a vital part of the alchemical equation or the magical practice. This also means that because the practitioner is required to make certain changes of consciousness within, the desired outcome is in harmony with divine will rather than the practitioner's own desires. This creates what is known as incorruptible or third ring magic. The experience of such pristine magic changes not only the environment, but the master of high magic as well. Profound evolutionary development then takes place in the body. And then she goes on within the article just to explain how masters of the runes and masters of high magic relate. So please also remember that this is the year of us learning how to live in high magic. And that is the work that all of us are having to work with. And this is why the predictions of the runes are very, very important for us to look at. So there's two particular predictions of the week which are published on social media and on Almin's pages. And with Almin's work. And the first one is the weekly prediction, which we read out earlier by the master Ella Jelinek in Russia. And that's quite an extensive one that comes up every week and very beautiful to guide and to work with. And then there's what's termed the Almin rune of the week, where she chooses a particular rune, gives us the understanding of it, and explains what that rune is all about. And that's normally very short indeed. So generally each week we work with it all, and you can find this up on Almin Diary and on spiritualjourneys.com. We also post it up on our Facebook page every single week as they arrive, and that is Belvaspata Healing South Africa. You're more than welcome to join us there. So the explanation of how Masters of the Runes and Masters of High Magic relate is very interesting for us, because again, these are alchemical equations which are science and spirituality merging together to create something completely different. And these create a profound evolutionary development. Rune Masters, there are 672 inner senses that are stirred into inspiration by infinite intent. These speak non-cognitively to the outer senses through the acupuncture points within the body. There are 670 points known in traditional acupuncture, but the 2 additional points have been lost during the ages. They are located 2 finger widths above the navel and 3 finger widths below the hollow at the base of the neck, which is where the high heart is situated. There are 672, which are broken into 7 sets of 96 runes that a Grand Master of the Runes interprets as the non-cognitive language between inner and outer space, called the Bridge of No Time. Important for us to understand that the high heart works on a non-cognitive level. It works on a very, very different level to the other realms, the other realities of emotion, of thought, of feeling, of physicality, because within the high heart there is no matrix involved in its programming or history within that particular process. So living in a high heart allows us to see things in a completely uncluttered viewpoint. Right, so we must understand that within these runes, that a Grand Master of the runes interprets the non-cognitive language between inner and outer space, and this is called the Bridge of No Time. That entire course is available on Spiritual Journeys to download. It's a course that came up just over a year ago and makes some fascinating insight, and through it you can also become a rune master yourself through various different initiations and working with. All the information is there, so please connect with it or get hold of us if you need to chat some more. And we must remember that in preparation for the sacred task, they purify the 12 main meridians of the body, as well as the 8 additional meridians known as the extraordinary meridians. Now, I'd just like to explain to you that earlier today we started off by repeating the 3 principles of divine compassion that we were speaking about that are posted up on Almeen Diary, and then the 8 principles in total, and Almeen will then be developing those particular principles for us to work with, but understand that the 8 meridians are very, very much connected to the principles of divine compassion. And you can see how that particular level of work is then coming up to play and beginning to interconnect with each other. So as we do one body of work, then another body of work also emerges. And as we learn to merge those together, it creates a state of absolute androgyny in terms of there is no male or female expression. There's just simply an expression of infinite expression through androgynous form. And we're not programmed on either a male or female level at that particular point. Really, really deep insights there. These 12 primary or ordinary meridians respond to the world and our environment, which is the known. The first 2 of the 8 extraordinary meridians bridge the known and the unknown. They are known as the Renmai and Dumai meridians of the bridge of no time. So great to understand is that we are really having to understand that we need to step into the unknown, because the unknown then would naturally become the known through exploration, through discovery, through practicing that which we are in any particular moment. And as these new processes unfold, we got to really understand that learning to live in high magic is also learning to live in a complete state of self-compassion, where we are 100% supporting ourselves on all of these particular levels. So to remind you all as well, that, through the practice of Balvaspata healing, we get some incredible information coming out. And just to let you understand that the aspects of Balvaspata, as explained within the healing manuals, and something that we often forget that is going on, is Balvaspata also updates through cosmic change. The impact on Balvaspata. Throughout creation, there are various states of awareness and awakening, and Balvaspata supports each of them for the benefit of all. Remember that polarity and duality no longer exist except within our cellular memory. All energy and power is now available to us and inseparable from us. It is no longer necessary to pulse between the poles to create energy. This also means that light and frequency, now unified, no longer are opposites that attract. All resources are immediately drawn to where they are most needed. This is the same for the pairs of emotions, for the rays of light, for states of being and heart energies discussed within the teachings of Balvaspata. As the purpose of Balvaspata is to remove the illusion of all disease, to remove the illusion of distorted emotion, and to remove the distortion of light, we can use Balvaspata as a tool to see the perfection of all things, to focus and enhance their perfection, to assist with the awakening of consciousness and to reveal the underlying perfection in every moment, to assist in the full expression of our being should it be blocked or not expressing fully. Balvaspata healing inspires the person or a part of their body to want to express at a higher level and or to let go of patterns and behaviors held in the memory, thus releasing illusion and allowing fuller expression. The ultimate gift of Balvaspata is to align with the song of creation. As an alchemical equation, it reads, compassionate support plus awakening from the dream equals alignment with the song of creation. That's what we're really speaking about, creating new ways within ourselves outside of the matrix, not within the known, but having the courage and compassion for the self of the journey to begin to step into these different aspects of it. So really deep about it, and the question really is for the healers out there, for those people working with Balvaspata healing, when last did you do a Balvaspata healing for yourself and within yourself, just to offer that particular aspect of compassion and support to yourself? Really, really incredible. Remember, the doors of opportunity are there for us to work with. So we've just got a few minutes for us now to work with. I'd like to just play a short little extract of a talk that Oprah Winfrey had with the author and healer Paulo Coelho, and this is just entitled Why the Universe is Conspiring to Help You.
One of the running themes throughout the book is one of my favorite all-time quotes, and that is when you want something, all the universe conspires in helping you to get it. I think the universe actually conspired in helping me to be here today. I've been trying to do this interview for 10 years. But where did that idea, those words, that theme come from?
Well, what I experienced in my life is that when I really wanted something, I always got it. Huh? Positive and negative. Because the universe does not think. You know? You have this subconscious mind that sometimes is attracting tragedy.
Right.
Attracting bad things, you know, because you want to be a victim. Because to be a victim is to justify a lot of frustrations and failures in your life. The universe is helping you. You want to be successful. The universe is helping you. The universe is...
Based on how you think, how you truly think.
How
you think consciously and
how
subconsciously.
You project.
Yeah.
And that was the healer and author Paulo Coelho speaking with Oprah Winfrey about how and why the universe is conspiring to help us. So here's a summary of the suggested work that we are working with in today's particular show. Remember, it's my own work on my own levels of self-compassion, realizing that it's something that I have to work and develop within myself. And I think several shows ago, I was saying something like, it's like I've lost my compassion for people. I have understanding of them, but it's like there's a boundary now. We have to overcome a lot of these particular processes. And then bingo, here we come in the last few days looking at these aspects of self-compassion. So these are just a few of the items that I'm working on, and I hope that they inspire you. But please feel free to add comments and add to the list as we're going along. It would be good to hear from you. So first of all, lessons are not lessons until they have been learned. Until then, they remain stepping stones and challenges in the arena of one's own ascension journey. Learn to not look back at the past as challenges learned, but rather as a rich history within the self that serves to have created not only boundaries to what is acceptable to one's own growth, but also as decisions one has made to grow from what was the status quo at that time. The second one, self-abandonment is what is holding us back on many levels. You may notice the current trend going on within yourself of wanting to only do that which inspires one and nothing else. The inner child is wanting to live freely, not only in joy, but in passion and inspiration. Learn to deliver yourself into firm, committed states of self-governance. And 4, practice living in the eternal ascension attitudes and qualities of love, praise, gratitude, and trust through, and as taught Belvaspata healing modality, very interesting dynamics going on there, because these bring you into an alchemically equated state of divine compassion. So understand there's levels of compassion you are working at this moment. All you might need to do is just bring an aspect of praise or gratitude, and the last few shows we've been discussing that and giving different perspectives on it. Compassion for the self is so much part of the ascension process's most valuable skill sets that we can learn and practice. It keeps us in a state of allowance of creating newness. It allows newness to come into play. The practice of the eternal ascension attitudes of love and praise and gratitude are a requisite for bringing in self-compassion. Without experiencing the depths of self-compassion, we will remain stuck in beliefs and old patterns, which then harden our hearts, harden our minds, harden our eyes and ears. It makes us biased and creates a state of us living a life of mediocrity instead of living a life of depth and meaningfulness. Right, so we just like to play with you a very short little audio that we've got on. We want to introduce Diane again in another completely different way to you. And what she's done is she's created a book called The Page of the Beauty of Drawing, of Dreaming of Poetry and Pearls. and it's up on her Facebook page this week. And what she's going to be doing is sharing her own inner work with anybody who's interested and is subscribed to her Facebook page. So please go right now and subscribe to Diane's Facebook page, and I'll just it's just under Diane Strydom. It's Strydom. But let's let Diane explain that for herself. There's a video on her website, and this is the audio from that particular video.
Over the last few years, I have discovered that just by seeing life a little differently makes all the difference. If you see the beauty behind the appearances, the magic in the mundane, all of a sudden life is transformed. The landscape of your life is transformed. The last 2 years I've been recording these insights and attaching to those abstract thoughts a visual component. And I've called it the beauty of dreaming, drawing, poetry and pearls. And this is what I'd like you to join me in looking at this beauty. Every day examining some magnificent little insight that appears insignificant. For example, taking note of that yellow rose that has survived the storm. Seeing the beauty in a friendship that has dispersed, that is broken, and lying like scattered pearls around you. I've seen the beauty in travelling light. So please, join me in this eternal journey and let us discover the beauty of this existence together.
And that's the Master Diane. To me is an absolute master of compassion, of love, of standing upright in her own mastery. And we are so blessed and pleased and proud to be able to present, Diane sharing her inner work with all of you in such incredibly beautiful ways. It's a book that she is creating and writing, and every day she goes out and she just looks for the absolute beauty within every single moment, and she stands so strong in that mastery, and really incredible to walk the path with her. So thank you, Diane, for that, and we do hope that you all listening will go onto her Facebook page and just befriend her, and she'll just click like, and you will start to see what she does as she unfolds these beautiful drawings, this beautiful poetry, and just the pearls of wisdom that she brings up within her own day-to-day life and lives in the fullness of that absolute experience. So her Facebook page is Diane Strydom, Diane, and then her surname Strydom. Alternatively, you can just ask us on our Belvas Patar South Africa page, or you can just send us an email and we'll send you a link to that Facebook page. And that's our show for the day, except for the outro by the Sia Almin, and let's look at that. A reminder, the great Holy One shall once again come to dwell with humankind. He will bring hope to all lonely hearts, and they will hear the voice of the infinite, like a wind penetrating their whole being. The earth shall awake, and everywhere new life will be birthed. In these days children will be sages, their hearts will be pure, and they will hear the voice of the infinite. The sick will become well, and youth will return to the elderly. Miracles will happen that bring life to the earth and joy to the hearts of humankind. A star will impart a message to them, and a wind will carry this glad tiding throughout the whole earth. And when men stagger as if drunk, and women become perplexed, then the holy ones will bring them hope. The seeds of godhood will grow in their hearts, and masters shall arise. And that's the mystic and seer Almin. Thank you so much for joining us on today's show, February the 23rd. We are here every single week, 8 p.m. South African Standard Time, broadcasting live around the world. We are in so many different countries right now, talking to you. We have so many different new followers, so many people week by week growing. And thank you to everyone who has taken the time to send information to us, to comment and just connect with us. It is our heartfelt desire that we can just inspire you, and that we can sit together as a family for just this 1 hour and a few minutes every single week together, and just be in the oneness of who we are, working with the teachings of the great mystic and seer Almin. We bid you goodbye and send you all our love, our praise and gratitude. And until next week, goodbye.
You've been listening to Radio Belvaspita, South Africa. Thank you for listening and sharing in our discussion. Should you have any questions with regards to the healing modality of Belvaspita or have any healing needs, please send us an email to info@belvaspita.co.za or add comments to our page on Spreaker.com so we can work on providing a suitable response. We now close this episode with the eternal ascension qualities of love, praise, gratitude and trust, and look forward to sharing again with you next week. Goodbye.